Welcome to Excel Zero, everyone. Soberoni of G&A Reviews here with a servant spotlight for the devourer of all FP, Angra Mainyu. We'll be examining his stats and skills, as well as going over pointers on how to utilize him effectively, and an overall grade comparing him to how he stacks up to the other bronze servants. I also have reviews up for Irie and the new Prisma alarm clock as well, so do check those out right after this. But now, on to Angra stats. Angra Mainyu has a max HP of 7,981, which is high among bronze servants, and a max attack of 5,681, which is low compared to the other bronze servants. Unfortunately, there aren't any other 0-star servants to compare Angra Mainyu against, and it isn't really fair to compare him to the other Avengers. Taking a look at his skills, his first skill is Zarik, rank C, which decreases the critical hit rate of an enemy for 3 turns between 30 to 50% depending on level. His second skill is Tariq, rank C, which decreases the Noble Phantasm charge of an enemy and decreases their attack for 3 turns between 10 to 30% depending on level. And finally, his last skill is Annihilation Wish, rank A, which increases his quick card effectiveness per turn between 20 to 40%, maxing out between 100 and 200% for 5 turns depending on level, and after the 5 turns he dies. This can be upgraded via an interlude to the end of the 4 Knights rank EX, which adds the effect of applying Guts one time for 6 turns that is stackable with other Guts. Moving on to his passives, he has Avenger rank A, which increases Noble Phantasm gain when receiving damage by 20%, but decreases debuff resist of all allies except himself by 10%. He has Oblivion Correction rank A, which increases his crit strength by 10%, and Self-Restoration of Magical Energy rank E, which increases NP gauge by 2 per turn. Taking a look at his deck in Noble Phantasm, he has a Quick Arts deck with Quick, Arts Buster, and an Arts Noble Phantasm. His Noble Phantasm is Vergavesta. It stuns him immediately after use and restores his HP between 1,000 to 5,000 depending on overcharge, after which any damage he receives he returns back to all enemies times 2 and times 3 at level 5. Taking a closer look at his deck, we see his Quick card hits 3 times, his Arts hits twice, his Buster hits once, and his extra attack hits 4 times. He has a Noble Phantasm gain rate of 0.79% and a star rate of 6%. This is average star generating and Noble Phantasm gain due to the double Quick card and a high Noble Phantasm gain rate. So I won't mince my words here, Angra Mainyu is bad. He's a 0-star through and through, he isn't secret OP or anything like that, so dispel any of those illusions. A lot of this has more to do with his mismatched skill set than it does his stats, however. Zarik is easily his least impressive skill. It's just a simple decrease in critical hit rate for one enemy. This can be helpful in certain situations like when you're fighting wyverns or chimeras who appear frequently, but without a secondary effect it feels very lackluster. His other 2 skills though are very strong, just not on him. Tariq is a strong skill as it decreases the enemy's Noble Phantasm charge and lowers their attack respectively for 3 turns. The one drawback is the slightly longer cooldown, but the skill is the most versatile and reliable one in Angra Mainyu's kit and can be handy in stall setups. His final skill, Annihilation Wish, is the most jaw-dropping skill on paper, and it would be absolutely OP on a strong Quick Servant, but Angra is not a strong Quick Servant. A 200% max buffed Quick still allows his Quick cards to pack a serious punch though, but because he only has 2 Quick cards in his deck, this skill is incredibly inconsistent. Post-interlude, this skill becomes incredibly strong, allowing you to stack multiple Guts effects, which further enhances Angra Mainyu's effectiveness as a staller. Though the obvious drawback of this is him dying after 5 turns, and that's pretty significant, but it can be offset with Guts. You should max Annihilation Wish first despite its inconsistency, as it's your only real means of damage, followed by Tariq for the cooldown reduction and better attack debuff, and you can leave Zarik for last due to how situational it is. Angra Mainyu's defining feature though is his Noble Phantasm. After activating it, he stuns himself and waits, and all damage done to him during that turn is then doubled or tripled if you have him at Noble Phantasm 5, and reflected back as true damage to all enemies. This is a very unique Noble Phantasm in that it deals true damage, meaning it not only bypasses defense but also damage reduction. For example, if an enemy has a skill that reduces all incoming damage by 90%, even a Noble Phantasm that ignores defense will still be reduced by 90%, whereas this Noble Phantasm won't. The downside of this is that the formula for it cannot be altered or adjusted. In other words, buffs do not increase this Noble Phantasm's damage. The damage dealt is simply your previous HP minus your current HP times 2. The maximum amount of damage this Noble Phantasm can do is extremely low, somewhere around 40,000, and that's if you build a whole team around it and increase your max HP with craft essences and other shenanigans. There's also no guarantee you'll be taking any damage while your Noble Phantasm is active, meaning it could do 0 damage unless you have Emiya Assassin's Taunt available. True damage is also extremely irrelevant for all but maybe 2 or 3 fights in the entire game. Therefore, rather than build around the most gimmicky Noble Phantasm in the world, if you really want to use Angra Mainyu well, then he works best in a stall team, especially post-strengthening quest. Rather than depend on his Noble Phantasm and exploit it, use his Noble Phantasm Drain, attack debuff, and his ability to stack Guts to stall out your opponents. For that reason, your best bet for teammates are all stall servants. Hans, Waver, Tamamo, Jean, George, Mosh, Pericles, and Media Lily are great teammates for Angra Mainyu, but the ideal pair is Emiya Assassin and Iris Veil. Iris Veil can stack Guts on him and heal him, nullifying his demerit, and Emiya Assassin can apply Taunt to him to make sure his Noble Phantasm is always effective. It's hard to justify using Angra Mainyu in anything outside of a stall team, as his skill set doesn't fit anywhere else and his Noble Phantasm is useless without intense setup. His Bondcraft Essence is Final Fragment. It gives him class advantage against Beast class servants and a one-time 20% Guts. The Guts is nice to have, especially on Angra Mainyu, but Beast class servants are rare, so this is also a bit gimmicky, although it does come in handy when you do face them, as many of them require you to have a stall team to beat them anyway. Instead of that though, I recommend using Prisma Cosmos or Kaleidoscope to aid with getting your Noble Phantasm. Street Chocomaid is also a great fit, as it matches your deck perfectly and gives you more damage, star generating, recovery, and Noble Phantasm gain. Craft essences that give out Guts like Nightless Rose or Star of Arturia or even Necromancy can help offset the demerit on Annihilation Wish as well. And finally, if you want to meme with his Noble Phantasm, Golden Millennium Tree is pretty much required because it raises your max HP significantly. Overall, Angra Mainyu is a trophy servant. He can do a couple of things like deal true damage with his Noble Phantasm and stall the enemy, but just because he can doesn't mean he can do it well. There are vastly better options available in his place, even at the 3-star and lower rarity. Until his strengthening quest, he's entirely useless outside of exploiting his Noble Phantasm, which given the very low damage cap is pointless for anything but maybe one fight in Eurofest. I won't give him a rating since I really don't have anything to compare him to fairly, but keep in mind he is the weakest servant. You can use him to decent effect in a stall team post-strengthening quest, but that's about it. He's a nice trophy though. And those are my thoughts on Angra Mainyu. If you really want to make use of him, I suggest ignoring his Noble Phantasm and just putting him on a team with Iris Veil. But let me know if you rolled him and what you think in the comments below. And please do check out the Irie Spotlight and the Prisma Ilya Alarm app review, both linked on screen right now and in the description. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and consider subscribing if you really enjoyed the video. Join the party over at our Discord, chill with us on Twitch, and follow us on Twitter. And I'll see you all in the next Servant Spotlight. Soberoni out. Later.